have one. Good morning, Agape. How is everybody? Oh, man, the love and connection in this room is so powerful. And I am serious. I need a gong, because these guys are singing, and everybody's la, 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 and it's just beautiful. So thank you. Reverend Lee called me this week and invited me to, step in his journey of wholeness, awakening to wholeness. And in our conversation, I'm like, well, what do you want me to talk about? He goes, what about being present in the midst of chaos? But when I sent him the title, it came out being still in the midst of chaos. And so we're going to explore that. This human incarnation and the understanding of our divine nature. But how do we handle life's challenges when they arise? So Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist teacher, talks about these groundless moments. Now, how many of you have had expectations and suddenly it feels like the rug was pulled out from under you? Anybody ever had that? Something in life happened? See, it's the human journey. Not just me, all right? And the journey of awakening to this understanding that life is always dynamic. It's in constant flux. There's absolutely nothing in this world that is guaranteed but this present moment. And Pema Chodron talks about how we move through circumstances, even in her own life. Or Lee with this unexpected visit to the ER and his willingness just to presence it. Or myself through a 10-year journey in my 30s through an illness that was so devastating that cracked every ounce of what reality was to me. It literally shattered every dream that I ever had. And it opened me to the deep awareness of the presence of God in the moment. But it's that ego identity that we cling to. It's the part of being human. It's not bad. Because sometimes we give the ego a bad name, a bad rap. I call it my sweet little ego. But that's that place from which things are shifting that all of a sudden we lose our stability. And those are those groundless moments that Pema Chodron talks about. That when we're in that flux, then how do we touch that place of the ground of all being that I call God? And so it's in those moments, in the awareness of that things are happening, how do you then move through whatever is arising on a human level, but stay in the truth of your spiritual reality and your practice, which is what we're going to talk about. So in those moments of shifts, it really comes to that reality that the one thing that we all fear and the one thing that is guaranteed in life is the death of our form and personality. And that is the basis of all suffering. That is the basis of all of our clinging. That is the basis of all fear of separation. And the truth is, once you are in this movement of the human, reality, but the divinity of who you are, you actually come to that realization through your practice that your soul, that aspect of God that is your very beingness, never dies. It's infinite. But that is the driving force in our ego identity, is that fear of death, that fear of change, that fear of uncertainty, and uncertainty is always guaranteed. So how do we presence that? How do we stand in the reality of that? Because I experienced that in my 30s. Everything that I desired and dreamed of. I was going to be a Hollywood director. I had my name, Academy Award winner. I didn't know I'd be Reverend, so now I'd be really great. Reverend, Academy Award winner, Reverend Veronica Valles, And I had these dreams and this creativity that I was seeking to express. And then out of the blue, I thought I had the flu, and it ended up into being a 10-year journey to the depths of my soul. Everything that I knew shattered. Everything. My job, my relationship, my vitality, the strength of my being. I was literally dropped to my knees in fear. I did not have the depth of the spiritual practice that I have now. So I was purely in human awareness and human emotion and human feelings. And Pema Chodron talks about that we must presence that. We must presence that. But I didn't have the depth of the skill sets to then move into the presence, even though I would have those glimpses of the divine nature, like with this marmalade sunset that suddenly got me out of my ego and out of my fear and into the present moment. Those moments when I'd be sitting there and all of a sudden all these little hummingbirds would start flying around. Suddenly it shifted me from the fear just to being here in the moment. Now, I'm standing on this side at 35, talking to my 30-year-old self, and there's that sweet little girl that I just want to say, it's going to be okay. It's going to all work out. And guess what? You're going to be an ordained minister and a mindfulness teacher, but we'll talk about that later, all right? But at the time, I didn't know that. I'm in the uncertainty. I'm in the fear. I don't know what to do. They tell me I'd never be well, that I'm going to, and I did at one point almost die. I was that sick. But that moment of death brought me to the present reality. All I have is now. Those moments of uncertainty kept moving me forward. Like that caterpillar that liquidates and then its little head pops off, and it has to pop off, but then it turns into the butterfly. Without knowing in the moment that the growth and the expansion that Jean so beautifully did in the meditation is that point of awakening to the divine presence that is seeking to reveal itself in something new. So in the uncertainty, we are called first to identify, who are we? Who are we really? Am I that job title? Am I that house? Am I that car? Am I that relationship? No, that's a part of my human experience, that I bring forth my allness and wholeness. But when all of that is shattered and you're left just with the present moment, who are you? Who are you really? And when you can let the dust settle and the mind clear and be present to all the fear and the stories that are rambling within you, you get to that point through your spiritual practice, which we're going to talk about, that clarity arises. It's like the mud that finally settles. And that clear, pristine lake of awareness that all I have is this holy now. And it's in those moments when we can become present, even when there's outer movement, that inner stillness, that peace that knows no human understanding, that wisdom that's seeking to reveal itself, that remembrance that the unity of God, of the mind of God, is my very life. That's the place when we touch the presence in the chaos. And it's a practice. And I'm not perfect. Now, I'm stronger now, but I gotta tell you a real quick funny story just off the top, because here I'm like, all right, I've been through a lot of stuff in life. I went through a long-term illness and I healed, and then I had a double biopsy at one point, and the woman was, and this was years later, and the nurse was like, why are you so calm? I'm like, you know what, I went through a lot in my 30s, and until I know, then I know. I go, until then, I'm just gonna breathe, and I'm gonna be calm. And she was stunned. Because until I knew, my body didn't feel like it had cancer in it. But until I knew from them, I knew, but I stayed in that calm state, just like Lee and his experience. Because it was my practice that brought me to that. But the mind's a funny thing. Because the other day, and this is totally a little bit off topic, but not really, it's like, what are the little things that trigger us? What are the little things that trip us? The big thing I can be present with, health, God got it now. Wholeness, it's mine, Nothing can stop me, the strength and vitality of God. And so I get off the phone with Lee, and I live in a really clean apartment. It was renovated. It's beautiful. And I'm like, okay, so what am I going to talk about? The stillness, the presence, the practice, and then a little roach starts walking by. And I'm like, what? And I can feel this, and I'm like going, Veronica, you're bigger than that. Like literally bigger than that, And it was just a beautiful demonstration of how the mind can shift so suddenly, all right? And I blessed it into its next incarnation. But the whole point is, prayerfully so, But the whole point is moment by moment, because life is dynamic and in this constant flux, what's the little thing that can trigger us and bring us back into the moment? What are we clinging to? That when something is actually present in itself, that we refuse to actually, just bear witness to it. Because a human emotion lasts 90 seconds. And Pema Chodron talks about this too, 90 seconds. And in Buddhism, it's all about, really presencing your mind, bearing witness to it, almost like you're this observer You're just witnessing the way that the mind is fluctuating, the reactions, the ego, the responses are the reactions. And it's really, the part is like, I'm going to presence that in this moment, my body is having a physiological reaction to something which is not a threat, a roach, but a diagnosis, a divorce, a job, the loss of a parent. Changes in the neighborhood. And what we're invited to is to presence that. Yes, there's fear. It's just a signal. Yes, there's anger. It's just a signal. Yes, there is, confusion. It's just a signal on the human realm. But my job is then to anchor myself in that present moment awareness and allow what is happening to happen without making it good or bad, without going to the creative story. Because if the motion only lasts 90 seconds and I'm still in it, I'm in story. And that's actually okay. Because the whole part of it is not to judge ourselves. Because that then adds to the ego identity and the clinging. It's to presence it. So with health, I had a need for wholeness. I actually also had a need for creativity to express myself. I had a need for love and connection that I wanted to meet. I wanted to live my life fully. And so in those moments of uncertainty, when some circumstance is happening, when change is in the air and you have no idea what is going to happen, you stand in the moment now, because that's all we have. And the observer effect is cultivated through our meditation practice. But the observer is that greater reality that is our soul that literally takes 2 steps to the left, 10 steps higher, and you're moving through the energy just to look, but you're not doing a metaphysical bypass. Oh, it's all good. I'm like, no, that's actually not. It was not good. It did not feel good. The sickness, the almost dying, the lost financial, that was not good. But good came from it. And that's what we remind ourselves. But the observer is there present, and we're not going to bypass our emotions or feelings either, because that's what gets stuck in our energy system, which then slows down in our body and shows up in some interesting ways as illness or, these phobias that we have. And once again, we don't judge it, we presence it. But it's that spiritual practice of meditation. It's that cultivation of consciousness that's already present. So the allness of God and the wholeness of God and what I call the fabulousness of God is already present as your life. And it's almost like it's a game. I'm being called that in this human experience to simply be present and see with eyes that see only God. To see how God showed up as the doctors, or God showed up as my naturopath, or God showed up as my mother in the invitation to come home and heal. God showed up as my nieces and nephews who burst my heart open even more. And if we can be in that observer state, what is it that I'm truly afraid of? I'm afraid of dying. Well, dude, that's the only thing guaranteed, all right? So once you can make peace with that, it's like, but the soul's going to go into some other incarnation. The minute you can presence that, it's like, okay, but right here in this moment, and you presence where you're standing, where you're sitting, what you're feeling, what you're doing. And then you breathe, and you allow it to flow. And then your spiritual practice becomes that, but the life of God is my life. The truth of God is my truth. The wholeness of God is my wholeness, despite any appearance in the human condition. Right now, love is present. Right now, peace is present. Right now, even in the midst of all that's twirling, I am still within. Now, stillness can also happen when you're dancing. But it's you being present to what is revealing itself in the moment. It's you being present to, wait a minute, this is just part of my human experience. You are being present to then I get to actually co-create my reality, and I get to actually have my perceptions, and I actually get to choose. So when the doctor said, you'll never be well, 2 of them, and they were amazing because they were 2 compassionate doctors. And I'm 30, and I'm sitting in the midst of people 80 plus. I've lost my job. I'm on Medicare, Social Security. I've got 2 college degrees. What's happening in my life? and fear is swirling, when eventually I could move through all that, all I got to was the gift of this moment. And it's that stillness and that gift of the moment that is cultivated through our spiritual practice. Because stillness is internal. I can still be moving in the world, and the world may be appearing as chaotic, but I am in charge of here. I'm not in charge of you, I'm in charge of here. I create my reality through my perception, through my choices, through what I take in. Am I being guided by a higher wisdom, or am I letting the race consciousness tell me, you will never be well? But something in my 30-year-old self knew I was on a journey. And despite the fear, despite the change, leaving my group of friends in California, but then I came home. And I literally came home to myself, to the divine. It was slow. It was painful. It doesn't have to be that way. And so I stand here as an inspiration of that when we do our work and we cultivate the consciousness and we're not projecting out there, that the inner chaos then is transmuted to the peace that knows no human understanding, to the harmony that is the mind of God. Ernest Holmes says, we can bring harmony to anything chaotic, but it begins here. And I start to look with a different kind of lens, the lens of love, the lens of God. And then you move through your journey, and then you become that mirror to other people of the possibility. So life is uncertain. But then we remember the divine presence, the I am that I am, because that's who you are. And you look from the lens of, let me move out of this because I don't want to engage in what I call the trauma, drama, blame your mama energy, because that's a projection. We're always, it's somebody else's fault, God bless our mothers. How many times have they gotten blamed for everything, right? They did the best that they could. So from a human level, there's the skilled behavior, the skill sets that we cultivate through our mindfulness, but it's really that spiritual presence, that touchstone of truth, that understanding if I truly believe that God is all that there is, that allness, that wholeness, the power, the presence lives and moves and has its being as me. And if I understand that I get to choose my reality, I might not have chosen maybe some of these circumstances, but I can choose the way that I see. I can choose the way that I'm going to be. And I allow myself to be free. And the minute that I can stand in this present moment, in the uncertainty, in those groundless moments when everything is dissolving and falling apart, and then yet I can touch that ground of being, which is what I call God, the one love, the one heart, the one mind, that is our place of power to be present and still in the chaos. And if I'm taking charge of my mind and my heart and my life, and you're taking charge of your mind and your heart and your life, imagine the ripple effect in the world. So that when things are twirling in the outer world, my job is to remain grounded and clear as possible, even while it's moving. And the groundedness is that reality of the presence of God that is outplaying in every single choice. But am I going to add love, or am I going to add separation and fear? Am I going to bring in joy, or am I going to bring in hatred? Am I going to bring in wisdom, or am I going to stand over here with all that divides us? Am I going to take the very thing that I know and I believe and I absolutely, with every ounce of my being, to see out into the world? Or am I going to get caught up in that illusion and add to the chaos? It's a choice. It's uncertain, but it's in the certainty of the divine presence from which that uncertainty is like, I'm okay with it. Life fluctuates. Relationships change. Houses get sold. Or if you're in LA with earthquakes, they rumble a little. But there's constant dynamic flux, I just talked to my best friend. I'm like, did you feel that 7.1 girl? You know, because I experienced that. But life is in constant flux. And if I am clinging to the past and the identity of who I was, and I'm fearful about the future because I'm listening to the race consciousness, then I'm missing the wealth of the present moment. And so I must, for my own well-being, cultivate my spiritual practice and meditation, whether it's movement like Qigong, Tai Chi, actual sitting meditation, writing, but there's something, though, about the process of being in the stillness that brings the depth of your being forward, that settles all that chaotic energy, and that brings you to the reality that in this moment, right here, right now, God is present. So here's your invitation. We're going to do just a quick meditation, but here's the invitation to actually love yourself, to understand that no matter what the experience has been or is happening right now, it's just an experience. So one, there's no judgment, there's no shame or blame. Be mindfully present. When you're out in the world and it's uncertain, you remind yourself, yes, this is the dynamic flux that is happening constantly, and bring yourself to this moment. When your feelings arise in the human reality of it, presence it, but don't give it too much power. Don't let that anger ride too long. It's a signal. Fear, it's a signal. Like I tell the kids, I go, unless there's like a tiger in the room, I'm like, seriously, there are people who are having experience where, yes, that fear right now is so real. But a lot of the times it's so self-imposed. I call it self-imposed exile from our truth, because right now, in this moment, there is no tiger in the room. None that I see of. But our mind is so clever. It can create a story, which is why I love my best friend, Robin Hackett, because we would just like, girl, we are so creative. Like, you know, we'll have moments, and then she'll start saying something like, oh, that's really good. I'm going to give you an Academy Award for that, you know, where we become very dramatic with our stories, and we lose the essence, like, I'm just afraid because I don't know what to do next. And then you bring yourself to this present moment. You tune into the divine wisdom. You tune into the divine joy. You tune into divine love. You allow yourself to sit in that calm presence of that peace that knows no human understanding, and you know that love is more powerful than any human experience. And that no matter what, as my friend Jamie Lula says, no matter what the world wants me to see, what I see is how God reveals itself in every moment.
I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask that you go to our website, agapecsl.com. Once there, click on the donate button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. Or if you would like, text your gift by simply dialing 972-532-6976. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to you in the world. I would ask that if you like this message, to please subscribe to my YouTube channel under my name, Lee Wolak. Again, I want to thank you for joining me in the Agape community as we learn how to better self-love through conscious living.